Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. 4 graded stakes races at the fairgrounds on Saturday. It's Louisiana Derby Saturday. We'll kick things off with race number 8, the Grade 2 New Orleans Handicap. Let's take a look at this field of older horses. They're going to go 1 mile and an eighth. And Matt, the 2 morning line favorites have completely different running styles. The one, the player, the second choice at 9 to 5, he likes to go right to the top and dictate terms. The 5, Good Samaritan, the 8 to 5 morning line favorite, he likes to come from the back of the pack. In this short field, is it a big advantage for the player?
I think it is. I think it's a tremendous advantage simply because I don't know who else is going to push this horse early on. We saw in that most recent run in the mine shaft, he got out there and set soft fractions and kicked away nicely down the lane first time in blinkers. And I was hopeful to see more pace signed on in this race to see what the player would do if his hand was forced early. The problem is in a 6-horse field, I don't know who else is going to be the one pushing him.
I think that's a very good point. Timeform US agrees with you as we throw up the pace projector. They've got the player out there. Maybe Hans Sense, the number 4, can stay in closest attendance, but it looks like the player might get a similar trip as last time when he just took the bull by the horns in the mine shaft handicap, got a nice easy lead and sprinted on home. And if you're worried about the mile and an eighth, heck, he handled it in the Benelli, albeit over a wet track last year. Now the mine shaft hasn't come back a great race thus far, but you think the pace situation here mitigates that problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things we always talk about. It pace makes the race. I also think, though, it's interesting to note or think about if you're against the player or you want to play against him. I mean, you're going to have a horse run their absolute best when they're walking on the front end. We've seen that time and time again. I don't know that you're going to get a forward move off of the 100 buyer. And I think there's a scenario where there's some other horses in here, one in particular, the other co-favorite or close to it, that maybe the ceiling for a horse like Good Samaritan is significantly higher than the players.
I liked Good Samaritan in the Clark handicap. I thought he had a big shot turning into the stretch, and you had to beat me with Seeking the Soul. It was a tough loss for Good Samaritan. He just doesn't have a lot of pace, and it's fair to say that the Clark hasn't come back a strong race. Plus, you've got to deal with Good Samaritan coming off of a layoff and against it perhaps from a pace scenario. I just have a feeling that Bill Mott's going to have this horse ready to go off with a layoff. He's got a couple of fast workouts over that deep Payson Park course in Florida. Maybe Hans Sense can put a little bit of heat at the player. If this race turns into a staying contest with that long stretch at 1 mile and an eighth, Good Samaritan's got a big shot. Unfortunately, there's no price.
Yeah, I mean, look, talent-wise, he's probably the most talented horse in the race, even more so than the player. I think the interesting thing for me is to see what we get off the layoff. Does he take that step forward from 3 to 4? And it just continues to go back into my mind. I wonder if that whole Jim Dandy run was so much that now everyone and their brother is just enamored with him on dirt. He was a really good turf horse. I'd love to see him get back to a middle distance on the grass.
The 6 Leo Frick, I wonder if he's going to be sort of a wise guy horse in this race, because a lot of folks believe that on Razorback Handicap Day on February the 19th, the rail was the place to be. We saw Hawakam skim the fence and win that race. Leo Frick on the outside, about 4 wide turning into the stretch. He gave a really good account of himself. He's lightly raced. He has more tactical speed than Good Samaritan. Should get the jump on that one turning into the stretch. And you're also getting Javier for Brad Cox.
Yeah, I agree with you on the wise guy side of things. I feel like a lot of people are going to look at him for understandable reasons against that inside bias. He was hung wide throughout. And then even that run 2 starts back, very big middle move, a big brush on the far turn, stayed on with it. The thing for me that's just a little bit, I don't know what to make of it. Visually, he's not a sexy horse. He's hard ridden for a long, long time. He stays on with it, and that's a sign of a good animal. It just, I wonder, against better horses, what are we going to get here?
Finished ahead of our good friend Untrapped the other day in the Razorback. That horse came back during a 99 buyer when running second in the Essex Stakes. Let's talk about Hans Sense, maybe a little bit up against it from a buyer speed figure standpoint. I mean, he's yet to buyer anything greater than 85 in his career. He could be in a tough situation chasing the player in the early portion of this race. So what he's going to have to do is somehow catch the player and then hold off the closers. It's a tough ask.
I suppose he's already graded stakes placed. I don't know if he's actually going to be a stallion at some point, but at the same time, if I'm looking at this and I'm the connections, I say I want to try to win this race, I go and I make the player make a decision, because otherwise, if you let him go 48 and change for a half, he's going to be tough to run down. If I'm Joe Bravo, I just send and say, you know what, Calvin Burrell, make a decision. You either want to get into a pitch battle with me, or you take a back seat and I'll see how far I can take him.
The 3 Scuba might be the surprise package here. This horse has credentials. He is a multiple graded stakes winner. This is now his 3rd start of the form cycle, and it appears he is rounding back into the form for a very good trainer in Brendan Walsh. Plus, his last 2 races are a mile and a 16th. He actually might want a little bit more ground than the mile and an 1/8, but this mile and an 1/8 works for him.
Yeah, it certainly does. The distance isn't going to be an issue for him. I question, the big thing for him has always been, is it enough distance? Because a mile and an 1/8, we've seen him do well at a mile and a quarter, mile and 3/8, even farther than that. So I think he has a nice puncher's chance. He's a fine horse. He's very likable. He shows up and runs his race. I do wonder, is he going to be compromised by pace as well?
Liked what Dallas Stewart did with Hollywood Handsome. After the Indiana Derby, a disappointing performance. It appeared this horse was crying out for a break. Stewart gave him a break. He came back off the layoff at the fairgrounds, and I thought that was just a really nice prep for this race. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Stewart said he was 75%, 80% for this race. The question is the 100% Hollywood Handsome good enough to run down the player and hold off Good Samaritan?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that all of a sudden we're going to get a 100 buyer out of this horse. I think maybe at best he can get a piece underneath, but I'm not convinced that he's good enough.
Let's take a look at our top selections for race number 8 at the fairgrounds, the Grade 2 Nolans Handicap. You're going to go with the player, wire to wire. Calvin Burrell's going to be glued to the inside.
Yeah, look, no price here and not really an interesting opinion, but I just kind of feel like he's one of the 2 talented horses in the race. I think he's controlling speed. Maybe he can catch Good Samaritan off the bench. Next time out, maybe not that same scenario, but I just kind of feel like he has enough things going in his favor. I'll go with him over Good Samaritan.
In Mod I Trust, I think he's going to have Good Samaritan ready off the layoff. I think, again, if it comes down to that staying contest at a mile and an 1/8, I think Good Samaritan's a better horse than the player. And if it comes down to a mile and an 1/8, I think Good Samaritan wants that distance a little bit more. I'll go 5-1-6-3 in the New Orleans Handicap. It's race number 8 at the fairgrounds on Saturday, and it's got an approximate post time of 3:39 Central. Good luck.